everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we're really excited today. We're talking with another one of our holiday movie writers, and we love talking with writers. It's so much fun. And we have Wendy Stewart on, who is the writer of Well Suited for Christmas, which y'all know I loved so much this year. So I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Wendy, for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really fun. Thank you so much.
Yes. So what we like to do with new guests is we like to get to know you a little bit. So when you tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us a little bit about how you got started writing. What inspired you to get into writing?
Great questions. Great questions. I kind of think my process is a little like a protagonist in a script would be, right? So the first thing you have to ask yourself when you're writing a script is, what does the lead want? What does the lead want? And then there has to be some kind of inciting event or some kind of something that happens that changes the trajectory of the lead's life, the protagonist's life, and sets them on a journey. So in my case, believe it or not, I was a political speech writer.
I saw that in your IMDb.
Yes. And so let's not talk about that at Christmas, because nothing divides everyone more than talking about politics. So let's not talk about it. But I will say that during that journey, I learned a lot of great things, right? Mm-hmm. I learned how to think quickly. I worked with really smart and intense and interesting people. Everything had to happen, right away. So there was some really great things about it. But then in about 2016, I was starting to feel dissatisfied with the whole situation and wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do with myself. And then enter the inciting event, enter the moment that changed my trajectory, which was, unfortunately, my husband got leukemia.
Oh.
Yes. And now I will say, my husband's doing great. He's in remission, doing fantastically. But I also know that is not everyone's experience, and so I can feel that, especially at Christmas time for people. I feel you. I get it. But anyway, so he became sick. So of course it changed the trajectory of my life, right? It changed what I wanted. Of course, I wanted him to be well. I wanted to be with him as he started treatments and faced this. I wanted to be home to support my kids and all of those things. So I had no idea what I was going to do with myself, facing like somewhat of an unknown future. My kids were getting older, going to go to college. I thought, if my husband doesn't get well, I'm going to be responsible for this whole bunch of people. And so I went to work at first, ready for this, at a concrete manufacturing company.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
That my very best friend in the world, she owns it. And she's like, look, I'll give you a job in the office. So here I am now working in the office. I was terrible at it. She had to fix so many things that I did wrong. I kept saying, if the IRS shows up, we're all going to jail, because of my accounting abilities. So then I met a producer named Dawn, and we met, and she was kind of working her way back into the industry after some time off. And
were you in California or where?
She was originally in LA. She did some things with Disney, but she was here. I'm from Philadelphia.
Okay.
So she had grown up in this area, and she was back at home, and we met. And so she convinced me to try my hand at this. Well, you're a writer. I'm thinking, So you ready? I had never seen a Hallmark movie. Okay. Now, one of the funniest things about this is you guys, you have this whole subculture going on. I mean, you got it going on. You even have merch. Okay.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you got it going on. I mean, it is a thing. And I will say that I admire over the years how it's becoming so much more mainstream. Like, people know about it now,
Yeah.
But there was a time, this was the fall of 2019. So people did know, but I had never seen a Hallmark movie. So she says to me, Wendy, she says, watch one.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my first mistake.
And you had never written like a screenplay or anything like that. That's what amazes me. So, because I thought about writing screenplays, but because I have a lot of ideas, but it's just like getting that first hurdle of like knowing how to write the banter and knowing how to like, that seems like that would be really hard.
Yeah, well, I think that there's an interesting kind of learning curve to it. I think that there's a format learning curve, which is easy to learn, right? That's just, either getting a guide or someone to teach you and that kind of stuff. You learn that piece of it. And then there's a creative part of it too, that understanding human beings, understanding how they operate, and then somehow being able to get that on paper, right? So my biggest mistake was, though, I sat down in the middle of the afternoon in November to watch my first Hallmark movie. So that means it wasn't a new one. It wasn't a premiere. I was just going to sit down and watch one. I did learn, well, honestly, I was like, I watched it and I was like, I honestly thought this can't be real. That this is a whole brand, like this is a whole industry.
Yeah.
I did learn later.
Do you remember which one it was?
No, I'm not telling that. I told myself, because I thought if I tell this story, I am not going to say which one it was. But listen, I have heard all of you and your colleagues. There are some you really like, and there are some you just don't like. And I learned later that I sadly had turned one on that was maybe not the best example. And I thought to myself, oh Lord, I just,
yeah.
But by this point, I thought, well, you know what are my options? Let me give it a try. Yeah. And so my partnership.
And it's just, I have no problem with any people. It's just particular taste. Everybody, I'm sure lots of people love those writers writing.
Right.
Just not for me. But for the most part, I am a champion of the writers. But yeah, there are certain ones that tend to work for me better than others.
Right. Well, let me stick up for writers 1 second too here. I have to, in solidarity for my people, because there's a lot of things that can happen to a script after it leaves your hands.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And
it's true. There's a lot of things that can happen, and it can sometimes be almost unrecognizable by the time you see it, and you're like, kind of a thing.
And I feel really proud of the fact, I feel like our podcast has really helped celebrate the writers. We've had the very first interview that we ever had was with Nina Wyman, who's an incredible writer. Yeah. And that's something I've always tried to kind of get people to understand the writers and the writing process, and and whether we've had novelists and screenwriters, and so I feel like as a like community of fans, the Hallmarkies are very aware of the writers in a way that other communities of fans aren't. Yeah, I mean, unless you're talking about like Aaron Sorkin or
they know. Like that. Yeah, people know where it comes from. Yeah, because in many ways, I always say we're not the face of a movie, but in a lot of ways, we're the heart of it. In many ways, we go from the idea. We have the idea, and then we put the words on paper. And so, well, let's be honest. Without us, nobody works, right? So
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast.
From the writer of such Hallmark Channel hits as Hitched for the Holidays and Lights, Camera, Christmas, and last year's award-winning rom-com novel, The Last Birthday Party, comes the acclaimed family drama, The Mother I Never Had.
It's the moving and powerful story of LA landscape designer Nate Cronin, whose father dies, leaving Nate an orphan at 30 years old.
But when the provocative and mysterious Amy enters Nate's life soon after, it sends him on a devastating journey to unravel the truth about his past.
The Mother I Never Had, which Town and Country magazine named one of the must-read books of fall 2022.
It's a novel that asks readers to consider what they would do if they found themselves faced with a parent they never knew existed, and if they could accept the secrets and lies that kept her away for a lifetime.
The Mother I Never Had is available through all local and online bookstores, and there's a special Christmas sale. Kindle copies 20% off through January 2nd on Amazon.com only.
Be sure to use our affiliate link in the description below.
A movie I think you should watch that might be
me.
a good inspiration for a rom-com is the movie. Have you ever seen the movie Speechless?
I have it.
It's with Michael Keaton, Gina Davis. They both play political speechwriters, but on opposite sides.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would like that.
And it's I think very underrated. It's a lot of fun. And and I think that you could take the bones from that movie and do a fun Hallmark movie.
Create something fun. Yeah.
You should
I think that, Hallmark Lifetime, they are having some success right now. I think that like Three Wise Men and a Baby, for instance, crazy successful, fun, people loved it. So I think that there is a niche right here to kind of create something, to make it Christmassy or something from something that people loved before. There's an opportunity there. Yeah.
It could be like the Christmas Candidate or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Let's talk offline.
All right. So how did you then go? So you get started on this process. You watch your first Hallmark movie. Then how did you go from that process to actually having not only one, but multiple movies in 2021?
Yeah. So I was very fortunate. The partnership between Dawn and I worked well. And I started to learn. I started to figure it out. Now, I will say something. I did watch your interview with Mercedes, who stars in Well Suited. And first of all, I think she shines.
She was so good.
I love her so much. I mean, she's just fantastic, right? But I died when you said to her, you talked about me and my writing, and then you said, I just didn't really care for her other movies. And I loved it though. I cracked up. I laughed so hard. That's fair. I was learning. I'm still learning. It's all a curve, kind of a thing. Oh, I laughed so hard. I loved it.
But you're a good sport.
I loved it. Maybe not because, it's a matter of taste. It's a matter of, I'm on a learning curve. I think I'm getting better. And so I'm trying to, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. This is a brand and people love it the way that it is, and so that's not my goal, but I think that there's some room to explore some like G-rated Heat, for instance, or some, there's some room for some of this stuff. And so I'm kind of figuring that out for myself and what my place is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and we talked about that in that interview with Mercedes that, Well Suited for Christmas had 4 kisses, which is very unusual. And we'll dive more into it. But yeah, I do think in some ways it did reinvent the wheel. I mean, I had no expectations when I, sat down. I was like, oh, this looks like an acquisition, not made by Lifetime.
Right.
And I don't know any of these people. And so, and then I was just like, wow, this was so good. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I've been singing its praises all season long. I thought you did such a great job in writing this movie. There were so many swoon-worthy scenes. We'll dive into, but they had such great chemistry, and they did such a good job of just building their relationship and not being afraid to make it like a grown-up relationship, like a real relationship. And I don't know, I thought both characters were very well written. They were very well done. And so, yeah, if it took those other movies to get to this movie, I say I'm for it. I'm all for it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because it was so good. I loved it.
Yeah. Now, I feel like though, last year I had Maps and Mistletoe on Lifetime.
Yeah.
I love Ronnie Rowe Jr.
Yeah, so cute.
Oh, and you know what? As a person, I think he's sort of fantastic. And Umberly too. You know, Umberly is she's a rising star. She's doing her thing. And I thought, you know, they filmed in winter. You know, they're sledding down this massive hill, getting injured. You know, those kinds of things. So I think that there were, you know, some really good moments in that. Well Suited for Christmas. Now, normally I don't get to see the dailies, you know, what they shoot that day. In Well Suited for Christmas, I did get to see some of the dailies. First of all, let me just shout out to Michelle Ouellette too, the director of Well Suited for Christmas. I saw one day of dailies and I reached out to her and I said, well, first of all, you know what scene it was? It was the scene where she's tired and he's walking her home.
Oh, I love that scene.
Yes, that was their first scene. And it was at night and it was freezing. They had not met. Good. So they just met and they have to, you know, lock lips and it's super cold and everything. But I watched those dailies and I was like, oh, I think we're onto something here. I just was like, wow, both of them. And Michelle and the choices that she makes are just fantastic. She's one of those people that cares about things that matter. And so I really appreciated everything she did too. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. I definitely want to talk to her one of these days.
Oh, but great.
How did you get the idea for this movie?
Well, you know, I did hear you and Mercedes talk about how it wasn't originally a Christmas movie. That's not true. It was always a Christmas movie. And one day I was having a brainstorm session with myself. And one of the things, don't laugh, one of the things that I like to do when I'm trying to think of ideas is I read idioms. I just read idioms. And I know that sounds really silly, but you know, you have to like jog the creative process, that kind of thing. Some days, you know, you sit and you get one paragraph on the page and some days you can't type fast enough, right? So I knew that some deadlines were coming up and I was reading idioms and I read the idiom well suited, to be well suited. And I was like, well suited, suit, men's suits, well suited for Christmas, a fashion designer. I mean, that's literally how it happened. That there was, you know, it came from reading an idiom. It doesn't always happen that way. This time it did. I was sitting in my living room reading idioms, and that's kind of how this one started. But then it started to really gain some momentum inside me as I thought about it and tried to figure it out, because I didn't want it to have the normal, you know, everything turns up roses all the time. I didn't want it to have that. I mean, it does turn up roses. Obviously, in the end, they stay together. They are together. But I wanted it to have some real obstacles. And I also wanted it to not work itself out the way everybody thought it was going to work itself out, right? You know, and I also wanted Rachel in the movie to be, I wanted her to be ambitious and motivated and smart and to think of solutions on her own, right? And so that's kind of how it started.
So did you work in the Colombian elements after Mercedes was cast, or was that
Bolivian? Mercedes was Bolivian.
Oh, okay.
Originally the character. And so when she was cast and we got to talk about it, and she shared a lot of the cultural things, you know, with me, which was fantastic. Right.
Yeah. But it added a lot.
I also, in all my movies, I put in people that I really know. So for instance, her business partner, Dhruvi Patel, is a friend of mine that I went on vacation with last year. She's a real person. She's fantastic. She's smart and she's fun and she's all these things. And DeMario is actually based on a friend of mine named DeMario Tatum and his wife, Devicia. And so they're real people, right? So Brett Stone, how this whole crazy thing got started, Brett Stone is my cable guy. Brett Stone is my Verizon guy.
Your cable guy.
Yeah, my cable guy I put my plumber in a movie last year too. Philippe, his name's Phil. I made him Philippe and put him in a royal movie. But yeah, he came during COVID. When COVID happened, of course, the schools were shut down, everything. So all of my kids came home from college or wherever they were.
Yeah.
And suddenly we had 6 people in the house again, and we needed some help, right? So I was working on this movie, and Brett Stone came over to help with the cable. And I said to him, Brett, you have a Hallmark name. That's what I told him. I said, Brett Stone. And so when I named her Rachel Roca, I thought Roca and Stone, rock and stone. It doesn't mean we're hard or immovable. It means we always have a firm place to stand.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that whole thing happened.
Oh, that's funny. That's really funny.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
I've been thrilled with Franco and Mercedes. I mean, what a perfect casting for this movie.
I could not have been happier. And a lot depends on that,
Yeah.
You watch them all, right? And so you get it. You by the way, let me just take a second here to say you're really good at what you do.
Thank you.
And it's fun. And I mean, now that I'm aware of this whole subculture, and now that I've watched a few of your interviews, and they're fun and they're smart. They're just, anyway, you're good at it.
Well, thank you.
So I was so thrilled. I told you I saw the first night of dailies, and I thought to myself, okay, we're on to something. I just knew it. The way that he kissed her, the way that he held her face, and just kept holding. I thought we're on to something. He is just that hair, the hair alone. My mother was like, the hair.
Well, and she was so good too. I mean, she's a very talented actress.
She's a rising star. There's no doubt about it.
Definitely. And when I loved how forward she was with everything, that she just was like, this is what I want, and I'm going for it in the relationship. And that really worked so well, especially with somebody that's so attractive.
Yes, she was assertive, which is what I wanted her to be. I mean, I think women, so she was assertive. She went for it. I liked it. Yeah.
Well, and this really felt like two people falling in love and in a relationship that would actually kind of maybe happen. Because a lot of times in these movies, you have it all waiting until that last 30 seconds so you finally get a kiss and they're going to be together, and that's fine. I love that too, but this was just so, I don't know, this was just so much fun to see them actually building their relationship. I loved the scene where she's doing the fitting, and he says that I find you're completely irresistible. Oh
yeah.
And you can see she's just looking up at him and trying to do the fitting.
So great, right?
I
can remember when I was working on the script, and I kept throwing in that she still didn't get his measurements because I wanted the heat of that moment, but it happened too early. it wasn't going to work. So she looked a little, I still didn't get his measurements. I'm like, no, it's not time yet. It's not time yet. We got to build to that moment. And so the payoff I thought was great. She was so fantastic. Yeah. When he says, I find her completely irresistible, and she turns and looks at him like this, and then all she realizes that the measuring tape's around her neck, that she's been hunting for. It's like, so good. Okay. Just done perfectly. So good. Timing excellent. Her timing's so good. I agree. That scene was good.
And it would have been really easy. The kiss in the kitchen, it would have been really easy to make that scene a near kiss. But I was really glad that you didn't, because I think it added more tension, because here's this thing that's happened that they can't talk themselves out of, this is like, so then they have to deal with it. And it was really good. And you also did a good job, I think, of developing both of their characters. So he wasn't just kind of a hot hunk, which he is, of course, but developing his character about growing up in foster care and why he wears black and what his insecurities are. And I just thought that was really good. And his relationship with Sloane, his relationship with DeMario, you really knew this man.
Well, he had some depth. He had some depth to him, right? But you needed Sloane and DeMario to help you understand him. Mm-hmm. You needed those two characters to help you understand where Brett was coming from. And how, even though he kind of had this persona with other people, you would see him with Sloane and DeMario and think, oh yeah, there. And she begins to see it too. He's a completely different person with DeMario or whatever. Yeah. So you really needed them to soften him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then when the story gets published and he accuses her, and he knows immediately that he shouldn't have done that. And we know, but we've gotten to care for him as a character. And so it works.
Yeah. And I think too, like when people have been through trauma or hard situations, sometimes they impulsively react if they're not complete, they just do. I've done it.
Well, he says that in the when they're dancing, he's like, you just have to.
I'm trying to extricate myself.
Yeah.
From my well-spun public, I'm trying to rescue myself. And what he's basically saying is, I reacted and I shouldn't have, and that kind of a thing. And that I think that everyone can really understand. I've done it. I say something or do something that, instantly in the moment I think, why did I do that? But I do it. And so, I did like that about him, that he could then come back and admit it.
When you were writing maybe I just like looking at you scene, which is brilliant. I absolutely love that scene. Were you conscious of the fact that like this kind of scene doesn't happen very much in these movies?
Yeah, well, so thankfully I don't really know what happens too much in these movies. And that has really been helpful to me.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's been helpful to me because I kind of just go for it. I kind of just whatever. And when I was writing that scene, I just wanted it to be like, when she walked away and she turned around and he said, I'm still here, I'm still here. Yeah. And so this independent, assertive woman that we're talking about, who built her own fashion house, all of these things, here's this moment where she has to kind of either believe or understand that there is someone who won't underestimate her, but will keep looking out for her. And so when he says, I'm still here, that was the moment for me that kind of launched that whole scene, or when she says, oh, you plan to kiss me? And he says, often, he's telling her this is happening, this is happening. So I kind of wanted it to be like what mature people would be. You go be who you are, create and do and grow and learn and all of those things. And I'm your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, it was a perfect scene of romantic comedy writing. I really do. I thought it was brilliant. And then it allowed her to then say, maybe I'm not too tired for that kiss. It was so good. And you're like,
she's feeling it too. Right? So yeah.
And then when she comes back into her room, her apartment, and you can see her like, oh my, it was so
I'm done for.
Yeah.
She has to admit to herself first, right?
Yeah.
Before she tells anybody else, she has to say to herself, I'm done for. I'm falling.
Yeah, it was so good. I loved her parents in the movie. I thought that they were great. And both their relationship with her and how they see that she's fallen for this guy, and then their relationship with him as well.
Yeah.
And like what the dad does is totally understandable, because he feels like he is defending Brett to these reporter people.
Gets his backup. Yep.
Yeah. And he's saying, you don't know what you're talking about, but it kind of gets them going and gets them researching. And so like the conflict I thought was well done in this. And because sometimes the conflict can be a little annoying to me, and it also can feel a little bit rushed, because they have to kind of, in these movies, they have to introduce the conflict, but they have to resolve it pretty quickly, because that's just the nature of the beast. But I thought that this was well done, that as understandable what the dad did. It was understandable that he got upset about it, that Brett got upset about it, and then I thought it was resolved well. So I don't know, it just worked.
Thank you. And I have to give a shout out to one of the great things about Lifetime is that it's a developmental collaboration lots of times. And so I originally had, not that you saw it on screen, but I originally had it that Rachel had told her parents what Brett had told her about being a foster child. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that then the father defends, him to the journalist and the photographer. And it was Brittany, who's an exec at Lifetime, who said to me, I don't think she'd tell her parents. I think she would keep that to herself. And so I had only seen it one way, and I was trying to work on how, and she goes, what if he drives DeMario over and DeMario tells him? And I was like, oh, it was one of those moments. See, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees when you're writing something. I think other writers would tell you that too, that you get lost in your own idea sometimes. And so the collaborative nature of Lifetime is something I absolutely love.
So you were working with
moment is all Brittany.
So you were working with Lifetime from the beginning with this movie. This wasn't an acquisition then?
Yeah, well, I think it was a little bit of an unusual situation.
Okay.
In that, and there's a story behind that I won't go completely into.
Okay.
But yes, I'm extremely fortunate that I can collaborate directly with Lifetime, find out what they're interested in, what I'm thinking about. Normally, I start with just pages of rambling. That I just get these ideas on paper because they're happening so fast. If you were at my home right now, you would see little teeny scraps of paper everywhere that I write something down and I leave it. And then I go around and collect it because I see something or I hear something or I think something. I think, oh, that's an idea. Oh, that's a good idea. And I kind of finally bring all the pieces of paper together and try to create something that makes sense. So that's kind of how it starts for me.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That makes sense. And so I liked the relationship between her and her parents. And then it just was really sweet, the relationship between him and her parents, and the dad calls him son. And the dad says, if you want to see the rainbow, you have to face the storm. Right. Like all of that really worked, I thought, well, especially for somebody that's been out of foster care, that really needs that paternal character in his life. It felt meaningful to me, that relationship. And I thought it really worked.
Well, going back to talking about what a character wants, what does he really want? He does want a family, he needs one. Anyway, he wants one. And of course, at the end, he gets it. He has to fight for it a little bit there, like he talks about moving a mountain because, he really messed up. And, we already know about her that she's smart and assertive and all these things. So it's not going to be a simple, I'm sorry. Okay, I forgive you. It's all over. It's not going to be that because she says, I don't know if this can be fixed. Right. And she said, he doesn't trust me. Yeah.
And he says to the dad, he says, I'm very fond of your daughter. And then he says, I'm pretty sure she's falling for you. So that was so sweet.
Yeah.
We like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
I also love the scene where he brings her Chinese food or brings her dinner. And they were like surrounded by so many Christmas trees.
And the candles, the real candles, I thought were so great there because that doesn't usually happen.
Yeah.
But the real candles created this whole flickering thing happen. And in my opinion, that, you know, you have your favorite or whatever, but that was probably my favorite scene. And the reason was
a great scene.
Is she says, "You're not my model. You're not an ordinary man, or you're not a regular guy," whatever I can't remember exactly. But, and that's where we see that she's really completely thought of a solution for both of them, because he has a legitimate thing that he's worried about. He wants people to think about the kids. He doesn't want them to think about what he's wearing. And she has all her whole future, you know, on this, whatever he wears, so that she can get her line into this store. So she comes up with something that really satisfies them both. And that's where I really love her there, because she is just saying, and she just comes out and says, "You're not my model." And he's like, you know, "I beg your pardon," or whatever.
Yeah, he's like, "This is the best rejection I could ever receive."
Yes. That's the greatest rejection I've ever gotten, you know? And it tests him a little bit too, in trusting her, because he says, "Well, I told you I'd wear whatever you want." And, you know, and the other scene, I think that scene I loved. And the other scene that I loved is when he tries on the first tuxedo in her home, the flower jet, and she's fitting, and he's standing there like, "Oh dear God," you know, kind of a thing. And she's pulling on the sleeves and everything. And he's just kissed her. You know, he's just kissed her, right? And so he's like, "I really like this girl. There's this heat between us." He's just kissed her. And she says, "I hate it." And he's like, "Oh, thank God." He doesn't know what he's going to do. Yeah. I kind of have an affinity for that.
Yeah, that's a really good scene.
I had an affinity for that moment, and the Chinese food. I liked that moment as well. Yeah.
So good. So good. And so then he buys himself at the auction. Was there a scene taken out of that?
Okay. Oh, I'm so glad you asked me this question, because so many people, I mean, not just even on social media, but my own family's like, "Wait, why didn't we see him get auctioned? Why didn't we see that all happen?"
Yeah.
So two things kind of happened that somehow got adjusted. I think for time, perhaps it was for time. I don't know. One was he was supposed to continue to stand at the end of the runway. So one of the things I think that kind of went wrong there at the end, excuse me, was after he walked to the end of the runway, he was supposed to stay there and have that look with her. Instead, he started to walk away and turned and looked at her. And it was kind of like, "Wait a minute, what about the bidding?" Right? So if he had stood at the end of the runway and stayed there, and then it kind of faded, we would have been like, okay, they just didn't show the bidding. But then somehow Mercedes' line got changed to, "I heard you went for quite a price." That Sybil Neal said it was the highest for any bachelor. And I thought, well, why did that get changed? It should have been, "I see you went for," or "Wow, you went for quite a price," as if she had witnessed it. And so those things, those two, and you know, people.
So was there a scene originally, an auction scene that got cut, or no?
Well, there was originally in the long script that I first wrote, but it had gotten cut early. So it wasn't the director's cut. It wasn't the director's cut. It had gotten cut early for time. So, yeah. So, and I'm learning now, boy, people are paying attention, because in the beginning of this movie too, apparently Droovy picks up a phone case, but there's no phone in it, which I still haven't really recognized. But people are like, oh, where's the phone? I see she's got, and I'm like, wow. People are really paying attention, which I love. I love that.
True. Yeah, we've educated our audience well.
I'm telling you, I don't know if you're a blessing or a curse in some ways, because let me tell you, these people are looking for certain things, and they know if it's not there. It's yeah. I like that though. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean. What a great line when he says, there's only one woman in this room I want to go on a date with. Oh, yeah. So good.
I loved that he bought himself. I loved that he bought himself, that he had told Sloan, he had made the arrangements with Sloan, you just bid until you buy me, because there's only one woman that I want to go on a date with, and
it was great.
Yeah, I did love that. I also kind of liked that she worked it out that Demario, the money went to his tuition. And I love
that was cute too.
Yeah, I loved when Brett says to him, so what are you going to do if one of these women actually buys a date with you? When he's talking to Demario, Demario says, oh, I thought you knew, that she had made this deal. But yeah, I thought that kind of worked well, because it would have been totally inappropriate for him to be at a bachelor auction, obviously.
Right, because he's so young. Yeah. But the whole, when she says they're dancing and she says, you're going to have to trust me. And he says, I'm just learning how to extricate myself from these situations. And I know what extricate means. I mean, it's great writing. I mean, really, there's no other way to say it. Great writing. You just did a great job with this movie.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And then he says, can I pick? She says, can I pick the suit that you wear to the date? And he says, you can choose every suit I ever wear again. Oh, yeah, so good.
Yeah. So I have a friend named Kevin who was texting me during the movie. He's my son's old baseball coach, believe it or not. And he was texting me, and he thought she was really, and he's like, in the middle of the movie, he says, she can choose any suit for me, He texts me, she can choose all my suits. And I was just like, wait for it, because that's coming full circle. Yes.
And so then they have a kiss dancing, and then they have a final kiss at the end, which I thought was really cute. The way she was just kind of like,
yeah. She's like
adorable.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah. So it's still my favorite of the season. And I've seen over 100 movies this season. I loved it. And everybody I've recommended it to has watched it, has really enjoyed it as well. So I just, it just had it all of what you would want in one of these movies, and felt fresh and exciting, and great chemistry, and, really good writing. So
thank you. I actually think you've given it a little bit of a second life, because I think it's doing well.
That's good.
And you have kind of done that. So let me thank you, because you've, you really have just given me personally a boost, but you've given the movie a boost too. And I appreciate it.
Well, very good. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we should maybe mention record-breaking Christmas real quick.
Yes.
We can't dive into as much, but it was cute too. And I enjoy talking to Michelle. And so that was, how did you come up with the idea for that?
Actually, one of my children was telling me about a record that someone had broken that was some crazy thing. And I was thinking about that. I thought, I wonder if there are Christmas specific records that people try to break. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but there are crazy records. Like there's actually a record where people have tried to hold up their Christmas tree with their tongue for the longest amount of time. That's a thing. Okay, that's a thing. There really is an.
It works that in because Michelle has like the super. I don't know if you watched that interview, but she has like the super big tongue.
Yeah, I know that fat tongue she showed. That was hilarious and cute, and I love that. She's so cute. She's so great. But like, there really is a woman in Detroit who has an 89-year-old fruitcake that is in the Guinness Book of World Records. I mean, and I even wrote in the script, it should look really unappealing, a 91-year-old fruitcake. So I kind of did some research on people, and there's an actual record for the most people making snow angels at the same time, and it's from North Dakota or something. So there's all these crazy things, and I thought, well, there hasn't been a movie that thought about this. And also, I really thought that the idea of a world record adjudicator was an interesting idea. And then the idea that she adjudicates Christmas so she doesn't have to celebrate it because it's hard.
Right.
And she's got these parents, and if she spends time with one and she feels like so she just works, she just adjudicates Christmas. So that's kind of when I got that idea in my head, that's where it kind of launched from there.
And it was fun. I enjoyed it. I tell you, I think the biggest takeaway though from this movie, I mean, I like Michelle. She was a lot of fun, but Andrew Bushell, I think he is going to be a big star.
A revelation. He was a revelation, I thought, in this.
He's in it, and then he's in another movie this season, which was actually really funny. It's called All I Didn't Want for Christmas.
I have that on my list. Yes.
Yeah, you should watch it. It was really funny.
Yes.
And he's super charming in that as well. I think that he has huge potential. And if Lifetime should keep working with him, and I think Hallmark needs to pay attention to this guy.
So believable. That's what I felt about him. So believable. You just believed him. You believed what he said, which was great. And I loved when he said to her, believe major life revelations go down better with cookies. Major life, and he just delivered it perfectly because so I did. And the other thing too is nothing sexier than a man doing housework, is this, he had come from this life and he, this important job, and now he was having an important life, but that important life was also taking out the trash and doing the dishes, those kinds of things. Humble life. But he did it. There was a motive behind why he did it. And, and he was making the best of the situation. Yeah.
If they were going to ask me for somebody, I would say him. He's a cutie. He was great. Really good. All right. Well, we have our fun holiday questions.
Yep.
We're going to ask you. Okay. First question. What is your favorite holiday drink?
Oh goodness. I'm probably I'm just a hot tea girl. I know that sounds awful and not necessarily but my family's originally Canadian. So everything was cup of tea, kind of a thing. So and they always put milk. I'm a lemon, honey, whatever, but I'm just a hot tea, plain old hot tea girl, I think.
Sounds good. Okay. Yeah. What is your favorite holiday cookie or treat?
Well, this is going to shock you. I do not like chocolate. I've never liked chocolate. I'll eat anything but chocolate and lima beans. Those two things, for some reason, do not suit me. So I'm going to have to go with something like bread pudding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, good bread pudding with a good glaze on it.
Oh, sounds good. Okay. What is your favorite Christmas song or carol?
Probably Silent Night. Yeah, I grew up in the church. I think that the spiritual carols really mean a lot to me, really mean, a lot to me at Christmas time. Yeah.
That Silent Night was originally written for the guitar.
Yes, I actually did know that. I think I did know that now that you say it. It's been a while since I've thought about it, but I think I did know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is your favorite Christmas movie? Classic Christmas movie.
Wow. Okay. You ready? I'm going to have to go with Die Hard.
Okay, good.
I know that there's a lot of debate about whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but I saw the best meme the other day, and it was the picture of who's the actor that played Snape? Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
When he's falling from the tower and he's and it says, this should be the end of Love Actually. Remember he did that terrible thing to Emma Thompson? Yes. This should have been the end of his character in Love Actually, throwing him off the tower. So I'm going to go with Die Hard. Yeah. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm going to go with Die Hard. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Which do you like better, Scrooge or the Grinch?
I'll go Grinch.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Which do you like better, clear lights or colored?
Oh, clear.
Okay.
I'm a clear girl.
Would you rather be in a snowball fight or build a snowman?
Snowball fight all the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, we're famous here in Philadelphia. We threw snowballs at Santa in our stadium one year. Yeah, you look that up. Everybody Google that. That's a true story.
Okay,
yes.
Good. All right. Would you consider yourself a good gift wrapper or not?
Ooh, I can wrap gifts. I don't sometimes have the attention span to do them properly, but so I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, probably.
Yeah, that's the same with me.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have an ugly Christmas sweater?
Yes.
What's your ugly Christmas sweater?
Well, it's actually, it has a reindeer on it and a big red nose in the middle that's like a fluff ball, and then the antlers kind of go up the shoulder. So I have a Rudolph sweater is what I have.
Nice.
Yes.
Very good. Well, you did it. You answered all the questions.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Thank you for writing such a fun movie.
Thank you for loving it. I really appreciate you're giving it a whole new life, which I appreciate. Yeah.
Well, we'll be looking forward to what you have coming up next.
Thanks.
And we'll definitely have to keep in touch.
Yeah.
And do you have social media you want to share?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at W Stewart Writer, and Twitter, same. And then being older, you can also find me on Facebook, which is just W Stewart Screenwriter. You can find me there, and you can follow and like my page and get updates there too.
Cool. Good. Yeah. We, unfortunately, our Facebook was disabled, taken down, and we have not been able to contact them. We've tried everything. I've tried everything.
Really?
So yeah. Nothing. I've gotten almost, I talked to one person briefly, but then nothing has come up of it. It's been a nightmare. So yeah, don't go to our Facebook.
Yeah. And literally there's some legit concerns about Twitter right now too. So who knows what's going to all pan out.
But the moment we have Twitter and Instagram, Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, check that out. You can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over the internet. And if people are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. And if you are listening or watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group, which is so much fun. And we do watch-alongs. And I pretty much can guarantee there'll be a well-suited for Christmas watch-along one of these days, which is really fun. And then we also have our merch store, which is so much fun. We have lots of festive designs. As you said, we've got our own merch.
Got your merch.
Pretty good.
I love
it. So check that out. And thanks so much, Wendy. This was a blast to get to meet you. And I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas.
You too. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone. Merry Christmas.